All right, welcome back to the Mind Body Mushroom, the podcast where we explore holistic health, personal growth, and the mindset shifts that drive high performance. I'm your host, Jordan Ryan, and as always, this episode is brought to you by Wind & Sea Coffee, the world's best tasting adaptogenic coffee, crafted to fuel both body and mind. Today, I'm joined by Patrick Nardulli, a performance coach, resilience specialist, and HeartMath-certified professional who's worked with everyone from elite athletes to operational military forces. Patrick's background includes consulting for the Surgeon General of the U.S. Navy, training within the Bureau of Medicine and Surgery, and leading programs that help people build unshakable mental and emotional strength. Whether he's speaking on stage, coaching one-on-one, or designing human performance programs, Patrick brings a deep understanding of the nervous system, stress regulation, and the tools we can all use to access higher levels of clarity, discipline, and health. This conversation dives into resilience, self-leadership, and how to create a lifestyle that reflects your values inside and out. Patrick, welcome to the show.
And Jordan, thanks for having me, brother. Sounds like we have a couple of folks that know one another and bringing a little tribe together of like-minded men and hearts.
That's what this is about, man. I'm so glad that you knew some of the people. So why don't we just kind of start with a little bit of your background, like wherever it makes sense for you to start. I don't know if it's in childhood or if it's sometime after the fact, but when does Patrick what's your origin story?
All right, good, man. Love it. Born and raised out of Chicago, Illinois. So it made the Navy easy, especially on the West Coast, because you grow up in the extremes of heat and cold.
Yup.
And so, and you've been out there in the desert over here in the West Coast, and it can get extreme cold. And then halfway through the day, you're peeling off freaking layers, you get into it. Mm-hmm. And you see folks breaking down just from that. But, as far as my origin story, man, just coming up, I was very blessed with good, solid Catholic background family, good parents, just had a very healthy background growing up. I felt challenging, but healthy. And then blue collar family, just absolutely appreciated and valued, first and foremost was other human beings. And so that's always been in my heart. And so that made life really easy for me because I just believe life's about connections and relationships. Man, there was a period of time that we started seeing everything happen with Kuwait. So we're just touching a little bit of military.
Yeah.
I was one of them guys, man. I just saw things popping off and said, man, I got to go do something about that. And so a buddy of mine, we were like, all right, well, if we're going to do it, let's go. Let's be Navy SEAls, right?
Hell yeah.
Yeah. That didn't pan out, but not like most of us.
Right. Right.
But that was the thing, right? So training in Lake Michigan, getting called out by the Coast Guard and finally making it in. Injured my knee during boot camp, and we were like literally escaping at night to go train because you actually fell out of shape back in the day when I was going through.
Same up there. They had like the 800 divisions, which were like the spec war, like the boot camps. But dude, everyone just got weak and skinny.
Indeed.
Sorry to throw you off, but yeah, I feel you.
And all that being said, bro, so came on in. Most of my passage was, and my passion was just healthcare. And so came in as a doc, similar to yourself.
Yep.
Retired as an HMC. My journey goes from 1990 to 2020.
Okay.
Going back and forth between the hospitals, back to the Marine Corps, hospitals, back out to the Marine Corps. Yep. One combat tour, one humanitarian tour, which I saw a lot of the same degradations and crushing of spirits on both sides. It wasn't about PTSD or combat. It was just seeing stuff that your mind wasn't ready to freaking manage and handle and to adapt to, and we're not equipped for. That's evolved me, especially my last 4 years, when I just started to see a lot of our brothers and sisters coming back and unequipped, right? And I was one of the first ones to come back. So I was able to see the rollout of not having the tools and techniques and the strategies, if you would, to manage the nervous system. And so we just saw, a ton of our brothers and sisters getting crushed and not know what to do about that. So that was my deep dive into saying, okay, let me see what's going on here, because I know when they left, and I know a lot of folks that left with, so I thought resilience and grit, came back with, a lot of challenges that we're seeing and still seeing with folks struggling. And so that kind of just diving into psychology, neuroscience, psychophysiology, understanding what it is to actually build resilience and get to the left, the bang you may hear every so often. I'm sure you heard that from Matt, and their efforts there.
Yeah.
And so as I transitioned out of the military, because of those efforts and tapping into those different resources, I got kind of pulled in and recruited on board to a group called the Naval Center for Combat and Operational Stress Control, which were really building the programs and rolling those programs out of the COST doctrine, which is Combat and Operational Stress Control doctrine, by the Marine Corps, Army. They all came together to try to figure out what are we going to do when these folks are coming back and how can we support them in the best way possible. The problem state is that we were still on the back end of things, right? So it was more of a stigma campaign to break down the barriers so our brothers and sisters would talk to one another and go get the care and the resources that were available. Since then, it's evolved, man. It's been awesome.
When time period was this that you were kind of
you
starting?
Take us all the way back to probably initiated about 2008.
Okay.
So here I am. I'm back from deployment because I was out there in 2003 when we crossed the border.
Mm-hmm.
And so coming back and just seeing all that. So, I mean, here we are. We got a long span of resources not being here and nobody even talking about it.
Right.
Right.
Real
So
quick, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So, so you're one of the, I don't know, I'd say like a very special breed of veteran that joined prior to 9/11, but was there through 9/11, and especially in as a doc. How did that shift occur between like what you were doing before and then, what was it like kind of over 9/11 and then into the invasion of Iraq and all those other times?
What a great question, man. I mean, I think you could ask anybody who was alive and well during that time where they were. I think exactly where I was. Literally coming back, and the areas out there. So out in 20, it was 22 area, Med Battalion, just came back from a run and dropped off right before I was going to go upstairs to see that, essentially a little quarter deck where one of our docs were standing by and seeing everybody wrapped around the television. I'm like, oh, and you need a knife hand, right?
Yeah.
What are we all doing here? Let's get up top. Let's get things going.
You got time to lean, time to close.
Absolutely, bro. And they're like, I think I was in HM1 at the time. They were like, HM1? They're like, no. And they're like, you gotta see what's going on here. And I turn and I look at the screen and literally looking at it looked like something from a Die Hard movie. And I still couldn't believe it. Still couldn't freaking believe it. But anyways, that was it, man. As soon as I got upstairs, because I was the S3 shop. So it was everything training and operations. I got pulled in by the skipper and my senior enlisted at that time. And we just started to look at what's to come in the future. And that just changed the face of everything we were doing at Battalion and what the plans were after that. And so, fortunately, I was able to contribute to that and be part of that movement and everything that went into it and training everybody to actually make that movement. And since then, man, it's been a ride. It was all about taking care of everybody around you. This is when you start seeing brothers actually hugging each other and embracing one another, which you didn't see in the past. Right. And so it's a new community, a new connection, a new purpose. That it, man. Since then, it was really delving into what am I going to do to take care of my brother and sister, just moving forward. And
then you said in 2008 is when you started seeing kind of these changes. So I mean, that's your 3/4 of your way through the decade before it's starting to enter the consciousness that like, hey, there's something going on because we're building these resilient people to go overseas, and then they're kind of falling apart when they get home. Is that kind of how you would describe it?
Yeah, I think you captured it well, Jordan. I think it's like anything else in the world, right? Even today, if we were to step outside and see something that our mind was not prepared to see, I mean, simply if you saw a dog get ran over, right? Yeah. God forbid, man. We got a puppy in the house.
Right.
But if you weren't prepared to see that, it's going to impact your brain differently. Right? So I don't think anybody was thinking about stress inoculation at that time. Right? Exposing folks to some of the stuff they're going to see. And even if you saw it on the television, until you're there and you smell it and you feel it, it's not real. And then your brain has to process that this is something, I mean, especially when you see women, children, and we've seen it across the board, whether it was going overseas to Iraq or Afghanistan or during the tsunami relief in Indonesia, and people were pulling babies out of the mud.
Right. Wow. So take me past 2008 now. So what's going on? This is probably getting relatively close to when you're getting out of the service.
Yeah. Yep. So just very fortunate, as I stated, man, just a dear friend of mine invited me up, and he says, "Hey, you know what? I'm standing up this new program. I know you speak Marine Corps. I speak Navy." He goes, he helped me kind of bring this to the fleet, and so that's what happened. But at that point, it was really based on the doctrine, was teaching about psychological first aid, the core leader functions, what it is to be a leader, to recognize it and be able to take folks and actually embody that and get them to the resources. The stress continuum model, I'm sure you may have come across back in the day, right? Looking at all the different domains of a stress response. Objectively, right? Back in the day, it was green, yellow, orange, red. We could always break that down in another, whether it's now or another podcast, and what that means and how valuable that is. Still as a cornerstone of just observing when one of your brothers or sisters are going through something, and they don't have to say anything; it's observable. But to identify that within ourselves was so powerful, right? And then once we can identify it with ourselves, it's nice we can identify it within someone else,
right?
And then changing it at 2008, that was the whole. It was really a stigma campaign, trying to break down the barriers, say it's okay not to be okay.
Right. And pretty successful. I mean, I don't know how it was like in 2008. I joined in 2013, but it seems like at least nowadays, which is, what's that, 2008 to, it's like 15 years, something like that.
Yeah.
It really is normalized, and it's like in some ways like almost cliche, but in a good way. It's like it should be obvious to, and speaking with Matt Domiancic,
yeah.
Domiancic, there we go.
He's a beast. He's an anomaly, man.
He was on the last episode. Gosh, yeah, oh my God, he's the man. But I think the interesting contrast was how normalized in many cases in 2025 this type of talk is for military and military veterans, and how alien and still stigmatized it is for law enforcement and first responders.
Yeah. And, I got my own philosophies around that. First and foremost, we're one large organization, right? So if it comes from the top down, Chief Naval Operations says, right? And then you talk to, the Commandant of the Marine Corps says,
right?
My people are our most important asset, and I need to invest in them. They do that. And so I just empathize with Matt and all our first responders, because it's as anything, and you know this, man, it's all about leadership.
Yeah.
And if leadership's not endorsing it and they don't believe in it, the funding's not going to be there, and the support's not going to be there. And at the end of the day, it's really about culture change.
Yeah. I was going to say culture. You've heard that saying, culture eats your strategy for lunch. And it's like, you can have a plan. You could have, a PowerPoint presentation, but if you're not changing the culture, then you're not really making progress.
Yeah, legit, Jordan. Those are true words.
So I have a question. So you worked with elite military teams and high performers. What's the biggest misconception people have about mental toughness?
Well, I think it's a great differentiator, right? Is that, and I'm really starting to delve down this path between grit and resilience.
Interesting.
And so I know a lot of guys that have incredible resilience, but they don't have any grit, right? And I have a lot of guys that have grit, but they don't have resilience. And so what I find is, the way I define it anyways, right? Grit is something that you and I, that's from a stress inoculation, whether we chose it or not, intentional, deliberate or not, that builds in that grit for us. Now, can we build that? Can we do that? I absolutely believe that. I think, without saying it, we do that in our military by exposing, right? I just believe in, we heard of eustress, but I really like to start looking at hormetic stress, hormesis. And,
you want to talk about that? I'm familiar, but like elaborate on hormesis, because that's a term that's been thrown around a lot lately, which is a good thing.
Yeah, no, for your listeners and for us to get in, deeper conversations when you, I, and Matt and and Guy get together and start having some roundtables, man, it's simply the progressive exposure to stress to the level that it stretches us in a way that we grow. Right? Just simply, if that was the simplest way I can put it, is now, so now thinking about strategically and operationally, how can I expose you? And NSW is great at this, right? Because they get them out there. They got smart people out there watching them, saying, okay, I'm taking you to this point, but they'll identify if someone's to a breaking point that it's going to be a medical incident, then we got to pull them back. Right. And this is where I love the foundations of the stress continuum model, is because if we look at the green, the yellow, the orange, and the red, green is ready, right? Everybody looks at green as ready, but it's not without stress. And so it's a great place to grow and recover, but it's important that we push them into the yellow, get them stressed, and then in a controlled environment, and then bring them back so they can grow and recover, just like going to the gym or anything else that we do.
Right.
Knowing your limits so you don't injure yourself, right? Because now you're in the orange and now you need additional support. That's not the intent. But if we have a mindset that we can say, you know what, let's press so we can stretch and grow, and then come back and then grow that green is the way I like to say it. Right? So now you're in a place that same stressors, but it may be different for, you or me based on what our experience was. That's now part of who we are. That's where I look at as grit. Right? Because, and then resilience, the way I break this out, and this is an evolving definition. Like if I was going to ask you, Jordan, when you think of resilience, what's your definition, your personal definition of resilience?
I think of resilience, I guess in two ways. Like if I were to think of it in a physical way, and this may not be the way you define it, but when I think of resilience physically, I think of your ability to recover, like it's how easily are you getting broken down? It doesn't matter if you can, squat, 415, if, you can't, walk the next day, then you're kind of lacking resilience. And I feel like with, the other type of resilience that I think about nowadays is, can you kind of roll with the punches, of life? Like when, I run a business, I have just a lot of external things in my life that like, I have a really hard time. I can't control all of the variables. It feels many times like shit is just happening at me, but my resilience is like, the things, the challenges that I'm dealing with nowadays. If I tried dealing with them 10 years ago, I feel I'd be overwhelmed and unable, but I've kind of built myself up. But I guess maybe I'm thinking about resilience. It sounds like a little bit more like grit. How would you, where do I have it wrong, I guess?
No, I don't think you got it wrong at all. And so here's a definition I'll give you a framework.
Yeah.
Is I want you to start looking at resilience as your capacity. Now, grit complements that for sure, right? Because you're already coming in with a level that you can sustain something, and you're not going to be depleted as soon as somebody else because of your grit.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So every time you start getting exhausted, brother, just say, you know what? I'm just building more grit.
Yeah.
Right? It's a great way. It's just, I'm growing, right? Every time you're challenging yourself, you're growing. So that contributes to or complements resilience. And so the way we're starting to see this definition evolve of resilience is like the human battery.
Yeah. Okay.
And so you got a certain level in there, but now what it is, it's all up to us. What do we do? And I'm going to give you this framework. Before, in preparation, during, meaning that'll be the tactical tools that you have. Right? In the moments, the mindfulness moments, the breath work, anything you can do, right? To ground yourself, right? In the moment. And then if you could during that time frame, the breath work is going to be able to actually renew that battery while you're in the fight. Whether it's short term, it's about having that battery full ahead of time. That's why I want us to start looking at resilience as it's the ability to prepare for.
Yeah.
And then recover from, just like you said, but there's more there.
Right.
It's to be able to adapt in the middle of a challenge or any kind of stressor.
Gotcha. Right.
So a little more comprehensive, but exactly what you were saying.
They kind of complement each other. That absolutely makes sense. And what role does like the nervous system play in resilience, and how can we train it intentionally?
So good, man. So good. I mean, that's a whole nother podcast for sure. But I'll
we'll have you back as well because
hey,
I
I'm
love this
enjoying.
shit.
No, I love geeking out on this stuff, man. It's so good and so important for I think
Yeah.
others to know and need. You know, I always like to start out with a little psychophysiology, and as elementary as you and I, you know, believe that the autonomic nervous system is so elementary, it's not, man. It's not.
Mm.
So, you know, just for your audience, I just want them to hear that there's this automatic system out there, right? This autonomic nervous system that's in our bodies that manages 90% of all the processes that go on in your system. If you were to sit here and do nothing, your body's going to keep running efficiently because of that system.
Mm.
And that's your autonomic nervous system. And with that, you have two different branches. One of those is sympathetic. The other one is parasympathetic. Now, the way I like to, you know, when I break it down to especially our military folks, right, just really simplifying it so they can really make it tangible to them is your sympathetic's your gas pedal and your parasympathetic's your brake.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they should be working in harmony, right? They should be working. When you're going down the highway, you want to work back and forth, right? That's the intent. The problem space is that I think most of us, and me included, and, you know, I'll be transparent, is, you know, I've pressed that gas for so long, man. It's conditioned my nervous system to operate there.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
that, and, you know, I mean, that's a whole other conversation for our folks that are coming back and haven't shut it off yet. But the truth is, we're really good at training the sympathetic nervous system.
Yeah.
It's
right.
life.
Right.
So what are we doing to start talking about shifting it and empowering them with what's going on within their nervous system, that they have this system and that they can actually control it with the breath. And so if you're down, man, I'll take you through a quick practical that I like to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love that.
I got you.
Let's make this a useful tool for the listeners. Yeah, I'd love that.
Awesome, man. All right. Well, you and I both know about, and so we're going to hit two different pieces, and I might, if we got time, I'll bring in the last piece.
Yeah.
And we're all talking about heart rate and heart rate variability. And so from heart rate, we often know heart rate to be exactly that. It's a vital sign, right? To just check your health and wellness. There's a lot of factors that impact that, whether you're sick, whether you're coming off a workout, whatever it may be, whatever your nervous system is actually reacting to. There's a lot of ways to look at that. But today what I want us to do is I want to do a quick bridge between heart rate, which most folks believe kind of ticks off like a metronome, right? That steady beat. Boom, 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 boom. When the truth is, it's always responding in the center of your heart. It's responding and reacting to the stressors of life and how you're breathing and that autonomic nervous system, which is really at the center of it all. Right. And that's that beat to beat change that happens. So we know that's why it's called heart rate variability, because there's variability within the heart rate. And to have high heart rate variability is actually a positive thing, a very good thing.
Okay.
Which unless you're in the fitness world or you're not paying attention to it, you don't know that. You're thinking high heart rate means negative.
Yeah.
But having that variability is identifying flexibility and adaptability within your nervous system.
Interesting.
So let's take you through it, brother.
Yeah, let's go.
All right, I'll ask you to just sit up tall. And I'll invite you to close your eyes. And this is why I do that, is I want to take away one of your senses because I really want you to focus on your heartbeat. All right, breathe in a little slower and deeper than usual. And while you're doing that, I want you to take your two fingers, your index finger, your middle finger, slide across your jaw, find your carotid. When you find it, you'll know it. You got it, brother?
Oh, let me put on this side.
You can come down a little lower.
There we go.
Beautiful. All right, I'll ask you again to just invite you to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, breathing a little slower and deeper than usual. And what I want you to pay particular attention to is the rate of your heartbeat. And what you should be witnessing is as you inhale, your heart rate will increase. And as you exhale, your heart rate will decrease.
Yeah.
Do that for another 10 seconds. Yeah, whenever you're ready, brother. Open your eyes, bring your attention back to the room.
Yeah.
So now what you just experienced there, Jordan, was first and foremost, you identified that the heartbeat is not like a metronome,
Right.
Religiously beating off at the same
Yeah.
level. It's always responding to an action that's going on in your body. And what's cool about that is now you've just been empowered to realize, and you probably already knew this, right? But for anybody else, is that when you exhale, you can decrease that sympathetic, that gas pedal, right? You're able to put on the brakes and slow things down a little bit. And the problem space is that everybody, they intentionally breathe in. Who's actually intentionally or deliberately exhaling?
Right.
Right? We don't. So now you have this new power that if you can do that, and it's just pace breathing. If you can breathe in 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out, or 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, whatever's comfortable for you, now you can actually bring a little more control and composure to your autonomic nervous system, because it's always communicating with your brain. And when you're constantly inhaling and just letting it go, you're telling the brain you're in a stress state.
Totally. That makes a lot of sense. And something that kind of making me think about, so we've normalized in a lot of ways talking about, that it's okay to not be okay, expressing. I think as a society, we fetishize the sympathetic nervous system. Go, 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 work, 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 more, more, more. And we've almost like shame the parasympathetic, because I'm as guilty of this as anyone else, but like I have the hardest time just sitting still and being okay with not getting shit done, and it feels like I'm like, dude, what laurels do I have to rest on? Like I need to, if I have, it's kind of that time to lean, time to clean attitude. If you, what are you doing resting? You have shit to do, and you haven't reached all the goals that you're going for. And that's been something I've really been kind of trying to work on, is just being okay with not being productive.
So here's my takeaway with that, Jordan, is shifting from a doing to being mindset.
Yeah.
Like who does Jordan want to be?
Right.
Just define that, and I mean, I bet you can say it, right? I want to be composed. I want to be kind. I want to be thoughtful. I want to have, I want to be energetic when I need it. I want to be a good host. I want to be a good business owner. Right. And so when we're looking at the doing, what happens is often we're caught up in that doing piece, and we're not, and often, unless it's truly aligned, right? Unless you're truly deliberate, right? And you have extreme discipline, and you've done everything from starting from your values and building out your goals, and that you're literally looking at the paper and saying, is my next action on my calendar moving me towards my goals, which are towards my value, or that I'm meeting my values, and that's what's moving me forward. And then that gives you the confidence that you're doing everything right during your day, so you can actually give yourself permission to go work out, take care of you, and do a little self-care.
Right. Now, do you have kind of tips that you would give, anyone about, especially people in high performance environments, to how to prevent burnout?
Yeah, bro, it's such a conversation right now, across the board. I mean, fatigue and burnout's a real thing, and it's I want to say it's partly, but it's mainly part of the the expectation management, and people aren't managing those expectations. The expectation is that, especially if they're uniform members or they're elite athletes or anybody in these high performing positions, the expectation is that they're going to perform well in stressful situations, and it's going to be a constant. And that's part of the culture we built, right? I mean, we built that. Right. Whether it's big America or if it's our military members, truth of the matter, we run a rank structure, right? We make rank based on our performance reviews. People make more money based on their performance reviews. So if I was going to give any tips, first and foremost is, man, I'm just a believer in self-care. And why do I say that? Because we are energy systems. And so if I was to take you back to the analogy of your battery, how many of you believe that you're at 100% freaking capacity all the time? like meaning your battery's freaking charged, man. You know, this dude is draining all day long, dude.
Yeah.
Whether and it's probably, you know what, most likely, I could probably point to the apps, maybe because I've been checking out podcasts from Jordan, or literally, I got a bunch of apps running in the background,
Yeah,
draining my
the
battery
background stuff.
that I'm not
Totally.
even fucking paying attention to.
Totally. Wow. Yeah. It's a good analogy.
So if I was going to give anybody guidance, man, number one, first and foremost, is self-care is not selfish. Be deliberate, intentional. I literally every hour, I have it on my phone. Alarm comes on to breathe, or walk, get in the sunlight, go outside. At least even if I was to walk downstairs and just go hug my little girl, come back. But I break off every time I walk through a doorway. I shift and reset my energy, and I recharge my battery. Yeah, I probably have a device here. Yep. So this is HeartMath's work. I don't know if you know anything about HeartMath.
No, and I have some questions about that. But yeah, maybe talk about it now. Yeah, go on.
So there's why I love it. I love to give overarching is mindfulness. Sure. In my mind, right, is probably one of the most greatest superpowers or resources that you have. And mindfulness is not a one thing. It's an umbrella of a lifestyle. It's just being mindful, which then you tie in EQ and everything else, right? So self-awareness. What are the practices that we're doing on a daily basis to become more self-aware? And I look at all environmentals externally, which we're hyper aware of, right? That's part of our training. But how much of our taking time to actually get in touch with ourselves and look inward to now know the difference in the feeling that's happening when I know that I'm starting to get elevated or aroused or activated, and then it's too late, right? I've already jumped.
Sure.
So mindfulness, I mean, across the board, right? So there's anything from meditation, yoga, grounding techniques, you know about box breathing, tactical breathing, recalibration. They're teaching in boot camp today. Exhaling more than you're inhaling, so you can actually turn on the parasympathetic.
Right.
So I'm getting those affirming nods from you. So I mean, this is all stuff you know.
Sure. No, but I don't mean to like throw you off. I'm just like, yes. Like this.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
You know, and I have a question a little bit about mindfulness. So tell me how you think, if you think about it differently, but especially because there are, there's meditation, there's a lot of different forms of activity that can garner mindfulness. But the way I maybe think about it is, it's like the opposite of getting lost in thought. Or transporting your mind to the future or the past. Is there maybe another way of thinking about it that because I think some people, they hear mindfulness and they're like, damn, you're saying I gotta meditate like every day, or whatever. I should probably.
Bro, I'll tell you something. For the last, for 15 years, I've been walking rooms with a bunch of our brothers with their arms crossed. You know what I'm saying? And just, finally we got to the left of things. We brought in mind, body, mental fitness.
Yeah.
And so the last 7 years. Yeah, the last 7 years, coming in and telling them I'm going to talk about their emotions and mindfulness. But by the end of it, they're like, okay, yeah, I need some of that. So I'll tell you the best way I break it down is, first and foremost, I want you to think about, anybody that's driving back and forth to work every day. And, I always ask the question, like, how do you actually remember your trip home? Or do you just show up in your driveway and you're like, how the hell did I not get in an accident?
Yeah.
That's mindlessness.
Right.
And so now, man, when I drive, and especially the 2 offices I go to, San Diego, baby, man, I'm mindful, man, just appreciating certain things, and I'm capturing those things, and it just adds my gratefulness list.
Yeah.
But to really answer your question direct, man, is you're absolutely right, Jordan, is if we're living in the past, the shoulda, woulda, couldas, right? Or if I said something that didn't go well, which I often do, or concerned about the future, right? It hasn't even happened yet. You're not able to be present.
Yeah.
And so if you're not present, you're not even capturing those moments, man. You're living in all the freaking angsts and stressors of life. But we're designed that way. We're wired that way. Right? That's totally our jobs.
Last night, this happens to me sometimes, but just last night, dude, I laid in bed from 12 till 2 o'clock in the morning, and it was unbelievable how fast time was going by, and I was not sleeping. I was just as soon as I would like, okay, like all the chatter and everything would kind of settle down, I'd be like, shit, how am I gonna, it was all of these, plan A, plan B. Do I have a contingency for what happens if this gets fucked up? And then, you know what I mean? And I'm like, dude, like I'm working myself up. And so I struggle with it too. And that's especially, so I'll lay there and breathe, but it's almost like what I can distract myself during the day with other shit that then keeps me occupied so that I can stay a little bit more present. But it's where I really struggle with it is in the absence of, distractions. That's when the projecting into the future. I'm more of a future worrier than like preoccupied on the past, but shit, man, I definitely am guilty of that.
Jordan, I got you, man. I'm going to give you a framework.
Yeah, please.
So, and I don't know how much you know about CBT or DBT. So CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy.
Oh, okay. Yes.
And
okay.
DBT is going to be dialectical behavioral therapy.
Cool.
The word dialectical means that two things can be true at the same time. So that's what you can say. This is true and this is true. But what I want to get at is just a self-talk model. And so anytime you're triggered, right, so we have a thought. And that thought becomes a attitude and a belief about that thought. And that often turns into an emotion, which turns into behavior, right? And then it's cyclical. And it can be going in all different, you can be hitting all different freaking corners, man, if you were to draw it out. And so the power of mindfulness it's like, the way I like to look at this is like, it's doing mental reps for your brain. And we've been training ADD in our kids since the iPhone came out. That's real.
Yeah.
Right. So, but hell, I'm guilty of it.
Right.
So it's so important that you do those other reps, just like you would do with anything else. So you have that staying power. Right. So I want you to think about that staying power to stay in the moment. Because what we do know is from literature and research is that those that are more present are happiest. Because just like you were saying, and here's the other thing, bro, is when you are living in the past or ruminating about it, or where you're like you, it's always thinking about the future. And that's probably why you're successful, right? Not a bad thing, but you're draining your battery.
Right.
And that's leading toward every time you do that, you're tapping the gas pedal.
Right.
And we know what's the hormone that's related to stress?
Cortisol.
It's real, right?
Yeah.
How long does cortisol stay in the body?
I don't know that.
Bro, a 5-minute interaction, 2-minute interaction can last anywhere from an hour to 12 hours of half-life.
Wow.
That's a long time.
Wow.
So now what does that mean for you throughout your day if you're tapping that gas pedal and you're not being mindful and deliberate to do one of two things? Just be mindful of how I'm reacting, that I'm not going to let somebody else hijack, right, my emotions, because there's a cascade of 1,400 different biochemical processes that happen every time that happens. And that stuff's living in your body. And by the way, and I'm sure you may have heard this before, is the body keeps score, right? So it captures that within your fibers and within your body. And so if I was going to give any guidance, it would be, number one, start practicing mindfulness. It doesn't have to be, and I mean, ideally, do it at home quietly, right? Just practice getting those reps in. But you want to get to a place, and the way I teach it and the way I train it is I want you to get to a place that eyes wide open, you're in the middle of it, but you're able to tap into that. Nobody has to know, right? And you're still crushing and you're renewing along the way. So that way you're not waiting until the end of it to have to recover. And you're not waiting until tomorrow to start over and have to build that battery up. You should be adding to that battery. It's kind of like having a charger on your phone all day long.
Yeah. Right.
And or,
I think like maybe another analogy for, exercise, for example, is like, an excuse that a lot of people have is like, I don't have the time. I have to drive to work. I've got to be there at 8. I work till 5. I'm this, then I got kids, I don't have time. And so but in their mind, they're looking for do I have a 1 hour of the day that I am doing nothing, and then that I'm motivated enough to get my ass into the gym and do this. Whereas like if you could do 5 squats every time you walk through a doorway or something like that, you know what I mean? You can build in that time. So is that kind of how you're saying this, figuring out how to make mindfulness, in the micro moments throughout the day rather than having to
You know
sit
what,
down for a 30-minute
Jordan,
meditation.
you just bring up a great point, man. And that is, let's just look at what your day is already and be mindful when you're doing it. So,
Interesting. Yeah.
like if Pat wakes up and the first thing I do is get into my shower and I go hot to cold, I'm going to be mindful of what that process is, right? I'm going to shift my mindset about it. I'm going to enjoy the water. What does that feel like on my body,
Right.
etc. I'm going to get out. I'm going to brush my teeth. What does that feel like, right? And simply closing your eyes, feeling the bristles on your teeth. What does the toothpaste taste like? What does it smell like? What does it feel like, right? How does that make me feel that I'm cleaning my teeth? Whatever that is. These simple things we're already doing, right? You just plug it in. It doesn't have to be named mindfulness. You know what my Jedi mind trick is with our guys there in the fleet? Anytime we're training, whether it's with weapons or with fire hoses, man, we just ask them, take a knee. Everybody take a knee, right? Just go circle. That's mindfulness, bro. Because we're asking them to be present and pay attention.
Would you say that, like, so sometimes I catch myself doing, I love listening to podcasts. I listen to podcasts, especially when I'm doing like manual things, you know, it's stuff when I'm infusing coffee or I'm doing whatever. And I think part of what has drawn me to them is that my brain kind of shuts off, but in a weird way, because it's like I'm obviously paying attention to things, you know, and sometimes I'm like, I know that this is not the same as meditating, and it's trying, you know, focusing on your internal states, which you're definitely not in that case. But, you know, do you think that there is a place for something like an external stimulus that you can place your attention to, or am I just deluding myself?
No, I mean, well, two different things is even while you're sitting here with me, I am mindful of my breath, right? I'm recharging while I'm with you. My mindset is different. My heart's expanding, right? Because right now you're pouring into my glass, right? Because you're allowing me to get in flow with you and have this beautiful connection, right? So I'm actually charging my battery right now. And because I'm mindful of it, right? Instead of just letting it happen. So from now, two different questions that you would tease out of that is, first and foremost, because I'm with you. Because if I'm doing something that is mundane and doesn't require that I have this incredible focus, here's an opportunity that I can go learn something, right? So I'm a podcast junkie too, or YouTube junkie, you know what I'm saying? Because I mean, you can get a PhD, you know, just by listening to all this stuff, right?
No shit, dude. It's for real.
And that being said, there's nothing wrong with that. The greatest, so the difference between doing mundane things and grabbing knowledge, good to go. It doesn't mean you can't be breathing through that process. In fact, the more you breathe through that process and get out of not just the analytical mind, but just listen to them. It's kind of like reading. How many times have you picked up a book and you had to go back because you're like, I don't know what the hell I just read.
Yeah, totally.
Same thing. But if you read and just kind of absorb it, process it, make it yours, dissolve it into who you are, just like if you were listening to a podcast. So next time you listen to a podcast, you probably listen to it differently, I hope. Is that you're just absorbing it as if you were there with the member. Right. It's going to be processed differently because you're turning off this crazy analytical mind of, man, that's got to be part of this or part of that, which I do as well. I hear you. You're going to hear some stuff and be like, man, that's got to be part of my next podcast. Right. I have no doubt you're doing that. Right. And it's not a bad thing. That's a beautiful thing. But the other side of the coin is distractions. And I want you to think about this: is when we're distracting, we're not renewing. How many of us know folks that they just, you know what? I've had a tough freaking day. I don't want to think. Even though I love this stuff, I just want to freaking watch some Netflix.
Yeah.
And I'm not judging, but know that you're not recharging during that time. You're distracting.
Interesting. Yeah.
If you could just do a little bit of breath work before that, or while you're watching it, be mindful. I would throw on, you know what I'm saying? Like I throw on a device and I'm looking at my HRV and I'm getting into coherence, and, you know, maybe I'm not as into the show as I need to be, but I'm distracted, but I'm recharging my battery.
Yeah.
I'm retraining my nervous system. To go back to your original question, and a lot of the work that I do is, and we know of neuroplasticity, and it doesn't just happen in the brain. right? But we are strengthening these pathways between the mind and the body that have been weakened for so long. Specifically, our vagus nerve has gotten weak, right? That's that parasympathetic piece. And that's why so many folks are having a hard time regulating in the moment.
Totally. Now, we mentioned kind of early on in the show, maybe at the beginning, I don't remember if we touched it before we recorded, but, I wanted to talk a little bit about mushrooms, which is something that I'm very passionate about, both functional medicinal mushrooms, but also, psychedelic mushrooms. But regardless of, how do you personally integrate nutrition and, and supplementation into your philosophy?
Yeah, beautiful, man. And I don't know as much about functional mushrooms. That's why I was excited about
Oh,
talking to
cool.
you.
Yeah.
I'm looking at lion's mane, cordyceps, and reishi. I know they all
Reishi.
have their own
Yeah.
things.
Yep.
Beautiful stuff. The wife and I have been digging into those kind of coffees, like Rise and some of the other name brands that are out there. Actually, I started with, was it Four Sigmatic? Was that the original?
Yeah.
Like the
I think it was
OGs?
like one of the original. I remember Tim Ferriss was talking about it in
That's
the
why, because he was
4
my
Hour
guy
Work
back
Week.
in the day. He was my virtual mentor. Didn't know it, but yeah, he was.
Yeah. Totally.
So that's why I started with it back then, man. And people were thinking I was crazy, especially all the coffee drinkers. Like, what is that stuff, man? It just smells different. I was like, yeah, it's earthy. It's just good.
Yeah.
It's natural.
Well, I'll send you a bag too of some mushroom coffee, because we do like whole bean mushroom coffee. But yeah, it has chaga, reishi, lion's mane, all the mushrooms.
I'm so in, man. I'm so in.
And so speaking of cortisol, which is something you mentioned earlier, reishi mushroom has been shown to decrease your cortisol production, I guess. And what's interesting with the combination in a product like coffee, so caffeine is a stimulant, and it's going to kind of spike that cortisol and give you that alert feeling, but the half-life is very long. And I guess like you were saying, like that cortisol, I didn't even realize that it's not just the caffeine that has a long half-life, but it's also the cortisol itself. So sometimes you can offset that by all the things that we've already talked about that help decrease your cortisol production and get that parasympathetic nervous system moving. But I've found that functional mushrooms have also, had that similar response, and where you don't feel as like you're tweaking out on coffee, and you can kind of like get back down to, at night, to where you can sleep and you actually feel like relaxed without feeling still kind of wired.
Yeah, was there a question in there, brother? I love that.
Well, I guess so. Do you integrate other types of like nutrition or supplementation
that was the original question. Yeah, great question, Jordan. So I'm a brilliance in the basics kind of guy. Too many of our brothers and sisters are out there, and and you remember this, and just looking on people's desks, and they had like 4 canisters of something, right? From from no explode, right? NO explode to the different kind of proteins. And the truth be told, man, if we can dial into brilliance in the basics first, that's a whole other discussion, right? Sleep, exercise, nutrition, and put that on the shelf. But when it comes down to nutrition, I am a believer of the insurance policy. I know nobody's eating as well as they can be. So a multivitamin, just find a quality multivitamin, invest in that. Your fish oils. Absolutely need those, bro. Krill is great. I use krill.
So let me ask you something about that, because I just started taking an omega-3 with DHA that my friend of mine, who's like a marine biologist and his PhD, he's
nice,
a good resource to talk to. And so he was saying, like, yes, especially for blood pressure and kind of like getting more elasticity in your blood vessels,
cardiovascular system,
your cardiovascular system. And then, typical like news article shit that comes out, I look at on my phone and it's saying DH or omega-3s may not be like is good for you, and they actually may be bad for you. And so it's one of those things where like eggs are good for you, eggs are bad for you. It's always like back and forth. And so talk about omega-3s and fish oil in general.
Yeah, and not that I'm an expert in that specifically at
Sure,
all.
sure.
But I'll tell you this, man. Just working in the research world for so long,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why no researcher ever publishes a paper that says anything definitive.
Yeah,
They
right.
just don't, because they know tomorrow it's going to be different.
Uh-huh.
But I
Uh-huh.
will tell you, as far as some of the staples that are tried and true and have all kinds of research, when I see a research paper come out like that, especially comes across social media, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
coming from a peer-reviewed
Yeah,
paper,
right.
they identified, one aspect of it, and they blew it up to sell the papers, right? To
Mm-hmm.
bring
Mm-hmm.
attention to that. And I mean, that's why, some great influencers out there do the same.
Mm-hmm.
They just tease
Sure.
it out because it excites people to say, man, that sounds different than what everybody else is saying.
Right.
Right. So, yeah, you're good, brother. Keep taking your DHA, your
Okay, cool.
EPAs, and
Very
your
good.
fish oils. So good for the brain. So good for the cardiovascular system.
Sweet.
Um, Absolutely important, and it's mitigates the impacts of cortisol and everything else that we have going. It's just good for you, from the heart level, from the brain level. Just a positive thing. The other foundational things that I believe in is, well, to be honest, what I'm really starting to tie in is a lot of the mushroom.
Yeah.
But that's something I think I'd love to tease out with you another time.
Yeah.
And so it's my fish oils, my multi, D3. Got to make sure you got K2 in that.
Okay.
And folks don't realize, everybody's been talking D3, and they've been piling it on, even here in San Diego, where it's
Yeah.
beautifully and the sun is out there.
Mm-hmm.
As we get older, we just don't process the same way.
Mm.
But K2 keeps what they find in D3 is that sometimes you're seeing the calcium getting into the blood. And so K2 with D3 together,
Yeah.
that makes sure that the calcium stays where it's supposed to be, in the bones, in the teeth,
Gotcha.
and not into our bloodstream. So very, very powerful to understand that. Not like my ashwagandha.
Yeah.
It's always good stuff. But I'm also a big fan of, creatine. Can't argue with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
At any age. In fact, our elders even more so when it comes down to just strength and it. By the way, it's a nootropic.
Mm-hmm. I'm
We're
trying to get
finding
my girlfriend on creatine because she's vegetarian, and so I
huge,
figured
bro.
probably yeah.
Huge,
Yeah.
right? You
Right.
want to get. Ideally, we're getting all this stuff from from
Food.
the whole
Right.
source, but
Right.
it's,
Right.
even if we get it and we're paying for it, we're so overworked here in the States. Unless you're
Yeah.
out in the farmlands,
Right.
we're getting beat up, man. We got to put in tons of it to get it. So we have to supplement a little bit.
Yeah, well,
Something
and
else
our
I do.
food sources are so stripped of real nutrition, and there's a lot of stuff. This was an interesting point that somebody, I don't know how true it is, I guess scientifically, but it made sense. But a friend of mine, actually, he was on the podcast, Jose Martinez. He was talking about how avoiding pork, and reasoning being why is that they're one of the only animals, like they're very sentient, they're like intelligent animals, and
Yeah.
they see their other livestock like being slaughtered, and so they get like massive cortisol dumps, and so you're eating a lot of the stress hormones that they're producing just by virtue of how the meat is processed, and then on top of all the other shit they put in the meat, antibiotics, this,
Yeah, Joe, that's a whole nother conversation. When I think
yeah,
about fish, you
yeah,
think
yeah,
about anything like farmed fish,
yep,
forget
yeah,
about it, man. They're stressed.
right, right,
That's why you
right.
see, if you ever go get some like Alaskan nice salmon, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
a steak, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
firm, it's bright red,
Right.
and then you get something that's farmed, it's like opaque and
Yeah.
it's soft and mushy.
Just
It's a
looks
whole
sad.
different thing. If you have it, man, I'm a big believer in trace minerals.
Hmm.
Is another one. And you can do those in a lot of different ways. I don't have it in front of me right now, but functional medicine doc of mine, she prescribed it to me. But they come in like glass containers. That's
Interesting.
expensive. I got an
Yeah.
easy
Yeah.
way. I
What
got an
are
easy.
trace minerals? Like it's like
So
yeah.
anything from your man, I'm freaking just blowing a blank
Is it
here,
like
but
zinc and stuff like
yeah,
that?
it's going to
Or
be your zinc,
yeah,
magnesium. It's going to be all those.
magnesium, the
But now
metals.
you
Yeah.
can get from Baja Gold. You can get their salt, any of that.
Oh yeah.
You can just sprinkle that in your water. I do it
Water.
every morning. You get
Yeah.
like 91 trace minerals. These are all
Oh
things
wow.
that are impacting your electrolytes in your heart and how it's communicating how it's supporting your neurotransmitters and how they're communicating within your body. So from a nervous system perspective, huge, man. And you can get a bag for like literally $15. It'll last you a year.
Forever.
Few years. Yeah.
Sweet. That's a good point. So let's zoom out for a second, as we're kind of getting closer to the end. Now, what do you, where was I? Okay. What's one thing that leaders get wrong when they're trying to build resilient teams or cultures?
What they get wrong is that if they don't involve, first and foremost, it starts with connection and culture. If they are not focusing on culture first in building that culture, because we all know that I can't be there for 350 of my guys and gals. I can't be. I want to be. And I'm hoping that I'm modeling that, right, for my middle managers and my middle leaders, and that's getting down, that's being emulated. But the truth of the matter is, unless I hold quarters like every single day and I'm the guy holding them quarters, it's not going to get down. So we got to build a culture. And that's where the money's at. Because if we're teaching a culture to look out for one another, right, looking out for our brother and sister on the left and the right of us, identifying when they're stressed, building the conditions in that it's not just the new thing to do is to raise your hand when you need help, but it's the expectation. Now we've shifted a culture that, and I always ask a simple question. Would you rather deploy with someone or pull away from the pier or drop in boots on the ground with somebody who needs help or someone who's gotten help?
Yeah, totally.
And it kind of says it all, right?
Yeah.
And so when we make it okay not to be okay, and that it is the expectation that you are doing self-care, and that you're taking care of yourself as well as your families, because we know the families impact us, that I know in the back end, you're going to take care of me and the mission.
And do you think that maybe starts, one thing that the Navy is notoriously famous for is doing like NKOs. It'd be like, hey, we've determined that there are a disproportionately high number of sexual harassment and assault incidents, and so like we need to take this seriously and do this, and it's coming. They're like, absolutely, yeah, you do need to take it seriously. And so what did they do? They put out an NKO like online click thing that you just click through and get to the end and say, yeah, I did it. So you know what I mean? So how do you keep that from happening to all the stuff we're talking about?
Yeah, Jordan, I think that the greatest thing is if you're gonna, any of these trainings that happen, they can't be clickable. It can't be another freaking just a requirement to check the box. It's got to be something that's talked about and there's a discussion. The power in any change, behavioral change, is to connect with somebody. And we got to remember that we're all human beings, and I think that's forgotten. They're just saying, okay, we want to make sure we've checked the box to make sure that we, from the liability perspective, we've done everything right.
Right.
But if you truly want change, that has to come from leadership, setting those conditions, saying, hey, we're going to talk about this. In fact, we're going to discuss it. I'm going to get you in a psychologically safe space. There's a lot of ways to do that, right? It takes a lot more energy.
Yeah.
And it could be uncomfortable because it's going to be bringing up emotions, right? Emotions are uncomfortable. That's why we're so good at boxing that shit up.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes we need to. When we're deployed, when we get back home in garrison, we got to unbox that shit, dissolve it, reintegrate it. Right. So now we can go forward and we can have these conversations. But to your point, that's always been a problem. But the fact is we got competing priorities, competing authorities in order to get the mission done first. And unless it's going to get me in trouble, they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
They're not going to do it because they do have a responsibility, because it's all, at the end of the day, it's about war fighting and readiness.
Yeah.
Right. I wish they would look at readiness, though. That's the thing, right? And I think we're really moving to that place. Unlike, we talk about the first responders, they're fragmented, so it's a little different. You got different stations that are better than others. But as an organization, I absolutely believe that the Navy and the Marine Corps, actually all sources, our office talks to all of them, and we're putting together a summit here pretty soon that we're trying to move the dial in that direction. It's just that we're such a large organization, right? Get arms around it, get the resources there, and actually put that time in.
Do you see the changes happening at all within the VA system, like for guys after? Because that's another thing too. Like within the special operations world, there's a lot of awareness and there's a lot of resources after the fact,
Yeah.
for people to go get various forms of treatment, whatever they may be. But big VA in general, I feel like is stuck in like 1950s medicine. Change socks, take Motrin. Here's a pill for that. We'll mail it to you. And I don't feel all the time like they have embraced some of what that leading edge is.
I will tell you, Jordan, my experience has been that, and it depends upon the region.
Yeah.
But I really believe they're being progressive, and they
Yeah.
are starting to bring in some of this. They're bringing in mind,
That's
body,
great.
mental fitness. They're bringing in, now medicinal medicine. We're not there yet,
Sure.
right? But they recognize it. It's so many different approvals to get there, right? But I think
Yeah, of
ketamine's
course.
already in place.
Yep. Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of progressive movement in that area. They recognize as well.
That's awesome.
Is we got to shift from the reactive model to the preventive model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
And
cheaper. I mean, you know what I mean? Like if you want to be as callous about it as possible,
right.
It's cheaper.
From a business perspective, it makes sense, right?
Right. Wow. So Patrick, what is next for you? Where are you going in your career or your mission?
Thanks,
And
man.
how can people kind of stay in touch with you?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking. A lot of my work is and as you know, from my bio and talking to Matt, man, my passion is for others to thrive, right? And really just going back to the human being, right, than the doing. But it really is about healthy for life. And if you ever read or came across Peter Attia's book,
I've heard of Peter Attia. Yeah.
Yeah. So his focus is health span versus lifespan.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I've
Right.
heard. He was on Sam Harris, Sam Harris podcast. So he's been on a few things. But yeah, love that guy.
And this is why I really wanted to get on with you and talking about the holistic approach.
Yeah.
Is how do we look at the whole body, get to the root causes, not stuff that we've been experiencing, even with the VA still. I mean, it's just because of the limitations of what they have.
For sure.
That they're treating the symptoms versus treating the person. But they're getting there, right? I do believe they're progressing in that way. The conversations are being had. So for me, it's about the greatest impact I can have in the world. And whether that is individual coaching and consultation to teams and organizations, especially, my heart is called to my vets, my first responders. And the more I grow and spend time with, the Matts of the world and some of the other folks up and down the coast here. In fact, literally 2 minutes before you called, captain of a firehouse just got done with some training. And he's like, Pat, man, I'm talking to First Beat. I want to get this stuff from my station. I was like, bro, would love to talk to you. I said, I got about 5 minutes before I step on with Jordan, but I will call you back. So what I'm sharing with you is there's a lot of, when folks start putting themselves out there, man, there's going to be incoming because there's a need out there.
Yeah.
And everybody's struggling, man. It's relative to you wherever you're at.
Right.
Right. But actually, brother, and I'm not trying to plug it, but I just launched this book.
Oh, sweet.
It's called 24 other authors of holistic medicine.
It's called Healthy for Life. Go ahead and read the title for people just an audio format.
Yeah, Healthy for Life, Foundational Skills for Parents, Teachers, Mentors, and Kids that they love. And it literally is, it's a cookbook. So it's got everybody's story in there. I've been very blessed that I was able to contribute 2 of the chapters.
Oh, wow.
One with the actual main author and head of the book. We did one on sleep together. And then the other one is it's chaos to calm. And it brings in everything we just talked about, the nervous system and how, I saw that in my own daughter. I recognize it within my military members, leadership, as well as those around me, and simple things that we can do to start shifting that and retraining the nervous system.
Wow.
So I'll send you a link, brother.
Yeah, please do. And now, how can everyone find you? Are you on social media, a website? You want to just plug your stuff?
Yeah, sure, man. I appreciate you setting the platform here. So brand new to the whole social media piece. not following it, but actually posting my own stuff.
Yeah.
Because I just been serving our those members that are serving, right? But with the book and some other stuff, so it's obviously www.Patrick Nardulli, full name, see it on the board here, no spaces.com. That platform will be coming out here shortly. And then my LinkedIn, you can find me, reach out anytime, as well as I got a Facebook out there, but I got another one for business, and I'll be putting that up there shortly. And then doing some great collaborations, man, up and down the coast. Jordan, I hope you're part of that.
I would love
the
to
work
be.
that we're doing.
Please plug me into anything that I can be of service on your mission, because this is really where my passion is, and I'm just doing shit on my own. So please, I'd love to help.
Yeah, and so you know it, man. I'm just anything I can do to elevate somebody else that cares about our service members, or anybody else struggling out there. I'm going to give openly. It's just who I am.
Well, thank you. Cool. Well, this has been an awesome episode with Patrick Nardulli, the Mind Body Mushroom. Like and subscribe. Give us a follow. We're on all platforms, and we'll drop this in about probably 2 weeks is when this episode will come out. So I'll keep you posted.